I knew this would happen. I just knew it and I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to believe in J.J. Abrams. I wanted to believe that Disney could use their considerable creative talent to turn Star Wars into something that felt fresh and new and original. Instead, I got The Force Awakens. Before I dive into the review, let me establish something that may be divisive for a lot of fans. I didn't hate the prequels, and I admire George Lucas for wanting to turn the galaxy that he created into a more realistic, complex sci fi entity. Let me explain. The original trilogy is all about the hero's journey. It's an adventure story with a simple good versus evil dynamic that transcends time and space. It's timeless and can never truly be emulated because it was such a complete story arc. We'll get back to that. Luke faces his destiny in the Emperor's throne room, redeems his father Darth Vader, the Emperor is killed, the rebels blow up the Death Star. The original trilogy movies are so beloved because they are extraordinary classic pieces of filmmaking and storytelling that made children go wide-eyed and fired up the imaginations of a generation. What George Lucas tried to do in the prequels was flesh out the Star Wars galaxy, to add some moral complexity and political intrigue. He wanted to do some world building, expand the cast of characters, parallel real-life historical events like the fall of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Nazi Party, and tell a war story. Say what you like about the prequels, but the battle scenes are quite spectacular. It's called Star Wars, and for the first time I truly felt that what was happening on screen lived up to that name. Massive battles between large, futuristic armies. You never got warfare on that scale in the original trilogy. Sure, you got the rebels flying 30 fighters into the Death Star and blowing it up, and the battles of Hoth and Endor, but the rebels were always trying to simply buy time for some scheme to be executed that would strike a decisive blow. With the prequels, you got the sense that the Republic and the Separatists were fighting a massive galactic war with capital ship combat and large ground assaults. Imperial technology is scary and cool looking, but it never really paid off. You never saw the AT-ATs or the Super Star Destroyers kick that much ass because it would not have served the plot to have thousands of good guys blown to pieces by superior tech. In the prequels, you got a large conventional Star War. Sure, they were poorly executed from a filmmaking point of view, but it was less about the hero's journey and the conventional monomyth, and more about establishing a more realistic galaxy, with political structures, an economy, a senate, an underworld. We have these films to thank for a lot of the lore and the excellent Clone Wars TV show, which you should check out if you haven't already. Star Wars without the prequels would be a much more lore-constrained and arguably less expansive mythos. There is a lot wrong with the way George Lucas went about making these movies, but I can see what he wanted to do with them. The Force Awakens was going to be the movie that brought the franchise into bold new territory, bringing in a new director and new characters to expand the story. There needed to be a sense of continuity, but also a strong new direction. The story arc of the original trilogy has been told. It's done. While it's nice to get an idea of what Han, Chewie, and Leia are up to, we don't need to see too much of them. The story takes place 30 years later, and the galaxy has changed. There needed to be completely new characters, a new threat, and a new established world that felt familiar yet different. We needed a new take on a 30-year-old franchise that also borrowed the best of what came before. For me, that involves combining the strong story beats, relatable characters, and iconic villains of the original trilogy with the world building of the prequels. Let me get the positives of The Force Awakens out of the way before I start my rant. The new characters are great. Daisy Ridley as Rey is a fantastic actress who is set to do great things. The chemistry between the two leads is a joy to watch, and Kylo Ren is a very interesting villain, a much younger, more temperamental, reverse Darth Vader who struggles with an internal conflict between the light and dark sides of the Force. I also think this film is very progressive in its casting choices. Rey kicks ass without the need for male help, and there are the seeds of a really cool interracial romance being sown. The design, practical and visual effects are stellar, as we would expect, and at times I truly felt that giddy joy of watching Star Wars. Imperial vehicles and stormtroopers also got a facelift. I really like the aesthetic of the First Order. That's all good. Now, here's why I came out of the cinema with an urge to cry like a little girl. George Lucas lost sight of what Star Wars was about with his prequel trilogy. Sadly, J.J. Abrams doesn't really get it either. He was so afraid of repeating Lucas's prequel mistakes that he went too far in the opposite direction, and what we got is a movie that basically repeats every plot point in A New Hope. Seriously, it's mind-boggling that not one critic so far has watched this movie and gone, wait, this is pretty much a slightly altered version of Episode 4, but with appearances by old characters. Don't believe me? Let's go through it. Scary shot of massive Star Destroyer over a planet. Evil Empire attacks a location with stormtroopers, kills everyone. Good character stashes a MacGuffin, like a map to Luke Skywalker, plans of the Death Star, whatever, in a cute droid and sends it to the surface of a desert planet. Big bad villain in black shows up and captures said good person. Questions said good character, gets a lot of sass. Then there's a young protagonist living a shitty life and yearning for something more on a desert planet, and it meets the droid. Gets it off the planet while pursued by the Empire. The Millennium Falcon is pursued by TIE fighters and enters a difficult-to-navigate environment to escape. With the help of a seasoned older mentor character, the protagonist learns about their latent force abilities and rises to meet their destiny. This is where it gets worse. The evil Empire has built another fucking Death Star. Only this one is bigger and can destroy more shit or something. And they use it to destroy a planet, system, whatever. Now it's about to fire at the rebels and they have to destroy it before it does. But first, a small ground team has to run through Death Star-like corridors shooting at stormtroopers. The shield has to be disabled before the rebels can shoot the conveniently unstable power core, which destroys the whole fucking space station because Imperial engineering is just lazy. The X-Wings have to navigate a trench in the installation to get to said power core and are almost killed to the last man until a heroic pilot blows it up. Yay! But hey guys, the bad guys aren't done yet. It doesn't just rhyme. It's the same fucking story. I've seen interviews with J.J. Abrams. He sounds confused a lot of the time. He deflects questions. He doesn't sound like he's got any passion for this project. He was trying to make a commercially successful movie that would also win over long-time fans. He knew that many of these fans hated the prequels, so he made sure to reference only the original trilogy in his script. In doing so, he went too far in that direction. He paid lip service to the original movies instead of creating something truly new. I'm firmly of the opinion that J.J. Abrams just doesn't fucking get it. He can direct a pilot. Indeed, the first half hour of this movie was really good. It got me all excited, and then he just dropped the ball. He did the same thing to Star Trek. He takes beloved franchises, teases us with a great opening, shoehorns in classic characters, and loads in references that fans would understand. That disguises the fact that really, it's a big blockbuster action movie that completely bypasses world building in favor of telling a simplistic story that is a vehicle for future movies and making mega bucks. If this wasn't a Star Wars movie with Star Wars music and spaceships, it would be a forgettable action sci-fi film. Like Star Trek, it's not a sequel because it doesn't expand the universe at all. It's an ill-advised reboot. One of the main criticisms of the prequels is that they make the galaxy feel tiny by cramming in fan-favorite characters. While I agree to some extent, I feel that George Lucas also made the galaxy feel larger by giving us an entire Jedi Order, a Senate, a Separatist Council, the expected political entities for making big political decisions, such as declaring and conducting war in a galaxy of millions of star systems. In this movie, a massive galactic conflict is being waged by about 5 decision-making individuals, and all of the classic characters just happen to show up out of thin air and help the leads to advance the plot. It's so simplistic, and you just don't get the sense that there is any kind of a background to this movie. Who are the First Order? Are they a government? Are they a terrorist group? How did they spring up from the ashes of the Empire? And what the fuck is up with the Resistance? Didn't the Rebel Alliance become the New Republic? Why doesn't the New Republic devote its probably very significant military and industrial resources to fighting this threat? Are the New Republic and the Resistance different things? Why are they called the Resistance if the rebels won the Galactic Civil War? Surely they would be the established galactic government fighting a resurgent empire rather than a resistance. This movie just completely fails to give any kind of satisfactory context whatsoever. Now, it doesn't end there. If the new First Order superweapon is the size of a planet rather than a moon, why is everyone able to find each other within about 10 minutes of navigating it? To be fair, this was an issue in the original trilogy as well. But what mostly gets me, as far as plot holes are concerned, is the amount of happenstance involved in the plot. Like, the protagonists happen to find the Millennium Falcon, and then happen to run into Han Solo, who happens to take them to the place where Luke Skywalker's lightsaber is stashed. Death Star thingy is about to fire. Oh, but we just happen to have a guy who knows its weakness. And that's another thing. Does the First Order tell it, like, every stormtrooper the structural flaws of their most important assets? Like, does every grunt in the First Order know exactly how one would go about destroying an installation like that? Then why the fuck don't they protect it more effectively? Post all available military personnel in the immediate vicinity of this glaring weakness. Oh, and Rey is losing a lightsaber battle against Kylo Ren, badly. Then for some reason she uses the Force or something, it's not explained, and kicks his ass suddenly. How? Why? Although, again, I mean, you could criticize the original trilogy for the same thing, but it's just lazy plotting. JJ took what worked and rebooted it. Nothing more. The Force Awakens is objectively a decent movie, but not the one I was hoping for. And before you say that with expectations like that I was bound to be disappointed, I know. But all I wanted was a new take on a familiar universe. All I saw was a muddled rehashing of old plot lines and shameless fan service. It's just sad. They could have taken inspiration from the expanded universe, Admiral Thrawn, the Empire and New Republic joining forces against an extra-galactic threat. Stuff like that would have made for a great movie. Sadly, we got this. I mean, hopefully the next film will do an Empire Strikes Back, but based on JJ's track record with sci-fi franchises, I'm not holding my breath. Anyways, let me know what you thought in the comments below, and thanks for listening to me rant. It's good to vent.